Step up. Atta girl. So, yes, the bell here. This is a noble bell. And bells are used in falconry so you can hear where the bird is when you're hunting. For instance, if the bird's following you through the trees, it's nice to know exactly where they are, because what you're really doing in falconry is it's actually a bird watching sport. And if the bird is out of sight, you don't see when they're chasing something, you miss the flight. But it's also very useful if they go down into cover or brush or fly a distance away, and you could relocate them, of course, with the sound. A few other things, the equipment on the bird. The leg straps are called jesses in falconry. Falconry has its own jargon and equipment that's and paraphernalia that's specific only to falconry. This is a red-tailed hawk, and these are a very common bird in the United States, but also very, very good hunting bird. And we use them for mostly rabbits and squirrels. It's their native prey. They're very well suited for it, very well adapted. You can see they've got nice large feet, very strong, but they're also mellow. They're also fairly calm, easygoing, relate quickly to falconry, easy to adapt. So anyway, she's getting ready to go. She's got a hood on right now. The hood keeps her calm, keeps her from being distracted by anything in the distance. And you can basically remove the hood when you're ready and do the flight when it's time. So it's an extremely useful tool. As you can see right now, she's in that state right now of in the ready. So one other thing I want to mention about the red-tailed hawks is, you see, she doesn't yet have a red tail. She will next year after she finishes a summer molt. She will grow all red tail feathers, and all of her body coloration will change slightly and have a lot more reddish hues in it. Pretty much all birds molt into new feather plumages every year. Red tails are no exception. This is a female. She's they're larger than the males in all the birds of prey. It's called reverse dimorphism. And she's probably an average sized female red tail. And the males would be about a third smaller in most of the birds of prey. And another thing, in falconry, we call a male a tiercel. Tiercel comes from a word meaning 1/3, which has got to do with the size difference, the 1/3 smaller. I got interested in falconry at about 1970, and I was 16 years old, and I read a book called My Side of the Mountain, and it was about a young boy that caught a peregrine falcon, and he lived out in the wilderness and caught his food with it and so on, and it intrigued me. And I saw the little bits there were on birds of prey on Walt Disney, and I started researching everything I could find, going to the libraries, eventually I talked to all the teachers I knew to see if there was a falconer. And I found a teacher that knew somebody that knew somebody. So I went through all the steps and found another falconer that lived in Wisconsin, about 10 miles away. And I rode my bicycle out there to meet him and learned from him about a falconry book called North American Falconry and Hunting Hawks that was written by, for North American falconry, which was a new thing back then. Falconry goes back over 4,000 years, records date, but most of the books on falconry were British and from Europe and Asia and so on. And so this particular book was very valuable to me. And anyway, I didn't get my first permit till 1972. So I'm closing in on 50 years in falconry here pretty soon. It's a passion. It's something, once you get into it, if you're really driven, you probably never give it up. I still get a lot of joy from it. It's one of those things that you can't live without if you're really addicted to it. It's not for everybody. There's only about 100 licensed in the state, maybe 110, I think now. Back in 1972, I think there were 50 or 60, so it's really not grown that much. It just takes so much time and dedication and effort. You really have to have a passion for it. To become a falconer, you need to be an apprentice for a minimum of 2 years under another licensed falconer that has at least a general or master class permit. So there's 3 classes: apprentice, general, and master. So you have to build facilities and have them inspected by the state. You have to pass a 125 question written exam. And if you do those things and you find a sponsor that's willing to sponsor you, then you get your first bird. It can be one of 2 birds, a red-tailed hawk or a kestrel falcon, which is a very small falcon, often called sparrowhawk. And if you show the proper care of the bird and you hunt the bird, this falconry is a hunting sport. It is not having a bird just to keep it and look at it or show it to people. It's to take the bird out, release it, and hunt with it, just the way the birds do in the wild. And like I said earlier, it's essentially a very intimate bird watching sport, because what you're doing is you're seeing the cycle of life. You're seeing this incredible agility of these birds and the ability to chase game. It's just something I can't quite get over, you know. I see it day in and day out, and I never tire of it. Well, the bells, as I mentioned earlier, the bells make the sound so that you can keep track of the bird. My brother John was also a falconer, and he's passed away now of cancer. But he had visual impairment, and so he was very reliant on the bells. So he would often have 2 leg bells and even a neck bell on the bird. And the bells at the time, there was only one other bell maker in the United States making bells. And they were kind of expensive. And so I was a machinist for many years. My brother John talked me into making some. And once I figured out the technique and started to produce a few, I kept John supplied in bells, and he appreciated it and critiqued them, make sure that I could, as I progressed with my quality, and never sold any bells in the United States prior to the old bell maker, Pete Osborno, dying. After he passed away, then I decided that I would ramp up, and I built multiple dies to make a whole series of sizes, and I started producing bells, and that was around 1990. So we're closing in on 30 years now. And my son Doug, who's behind the camera right now, he has been helping me since he was a teenager, and he's going to be 43 years old this year. And still, he makes more bells than I do, to be quite honest. He makes the majority of the bells, and his quality is beyond compare. It's top notch. So that's a little bit of bell story. Now, we do sell them worldwide. They go all over a lot of Europe. A lot of parts of Europe buy them. And I've even sold bells to China and Vietnam. I mean, some of the countries I could never imagine selling to. So it's been a very interesting business. And it's also got me acquainted with a large number of falconers around the world. It's this amazing network that we have. Falconers have a certain bond that you just don't get, with other sports. In Wisconsin, just a little tight-knit group here, there's about 100 licensed falconers, but half of them are in my club in the Wisconsin Falconers Association, and we're close friends. That's an extremely high percentage of any given sport, of any one kind. And they come from all walks of life. Falconers are doctors, lawyers, they're factory workers, they're every occupation you can imagine there's a falconer. But another interesting thing about falconers, there's a far above average percentage of artists that are falconers. Many, many falconers are artists, whether it's music, painting, sculptures, I can't even name it all. Anything you can think of in the world of art. Writers, there's falconers. I don't know if it's just something about the nature of the people that want to do this, because falconry itself is an art. It's not just a hobby. It's not just a sport. It's a lifestyle, and it's an art. So to watch the bird do what it does is, it's moving art, it's living art.
Can I see her? There she is, all relaxed. Hold up a foot. Okay. That's that. Thanks, Dad.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome, Doug. It's a lot of fun.
I love you.
I love you too. You're an awesome kid. Couldn't be happier.
Best dad in the world.